Hi, my name's Bill and I'm an alcoholic. And today's share is called Surrender. Knowing when to walk away or when to stay is what we learn to do as we grow up. Learning when to help and when not to, and learning what's right and what's wrong is where we build our morals. Good and bad, hurtful and kind, right and wrong, yes and no, please and thank you. These form the very fibres of our personalities, and as we change, we get older, and as we get older, we change. We are all slightly different, yet we live side by side harmoniously. Not giving up and staying true to my values is a journey I've taken 1,000 times. Knowing which path is wholesome and which isn't becomes the key to a virtuous life. But all of these I've got wrong 1,000 and more times. Alcoholism is not just about drinking too much. It's about messing up. It's about doing things I regretted. It's about upsetting people. It's about annoying those close to you. It's about having resentments. It's about storming out and slamming doors. It's about getting upset when I'm drunk. And it's also about trying what I thought was right, only to see in hindsight I was mistaken. Because I didn't know what was right and wrong a lot of the time, to be quite honest, especially after I'd taken a drink. Because after I'd taken a drink, I saw things differently. Of course, in the morning, after the night before, I saw the error of my ways. My journey in life was obviously not a clear, serene path to utopia. It wasn't all mapped out and all nice and clean. I didn't leave school with lots of exams and go into a well-paid job and follow my pension path and took 2 weeks holiday every year. And my life was especially not an easy option in learning how to live. Chaos and uncertainty, upset and degradation, resentments and pain and fear and losing friends were just bywords to my serious drinking. Which being told to move on or sort myself out, or do you have to drink like that, or can't you just go for half an hour without one, or why do you have to get so angry, or why can't you stop getting resentful towards everybody, or you think everybody's out to get you, were probably the most annoying things I ever wanted to hear. But the reality is I knew they were all true. I didn't like criticism. I didn't like hearing the truth about myself. I didn't like people telling me things about myself that were painful. It was horrible. But moving on was exactly what I needed to do. But in order for me to move on from my drinking, I had 2 massive obstacles. 2 enormous hills to climb. And they were difficult. One was my drinking, obviously. And the other one was my sheer determination to succeed at any cost. Because I never gave in, I never backed down, I never walked away. But one day I did give in. I threw in the towel. And I'd had enough. I was quite literally at the jumping off place. And yes, I did want to die. And having nowhere else to go was the best place I've ever come to in my life. Because if I had somewhere else to go, somewhere else to think of, another belief, something else to occupy my mind, I wouldn't have got sobered up. But I did have nowhere else to go, mentally, physically and spiritually. And the one thing I'd fought so hard against all my life turned out to be the one thing that was to eventually save my life. And that one thing was, I surrendered. Surrendering is a spiritual need, it's a physical need, and it's a mental need. Surrendering is a spiritual action. It's a spiritual feeling of wanting what I don't have. And it's a spiritual feeling of needing change, of wanting out of where I was living, of changing my life around. I had come to the end. Surrendering was about lowering my wants to examine my needs. It was a doorway that took me from ego to relaxation. And it was the first step from determination to acceptance. Surrendering turned from being a weakness in my life to being my greatest strength. And within that new strength there was an insight into how the other half lived. I never liked people who backed down and walked away. I thought they were weak-willed. And in early days in AA, you would hear these sayings, surrender to win, let go and let God, hand it over. All these little sayings that, do you know what? Weak-willed people do those. But I found out today that only strong-willed people do them, because it takes a very strong-willed person to surrender to something that they just never want to back down on. But I had no option. There was nowhere else to go. There was no friendly direction left. And in surrendering, it freed up a world in which letting go eventually becomes a little easier, where saying sorry becomes almost routine, and where taking my time easy does it. Let go and let God all end up with a certain ring of happiness about them. Surrendering is a triumphant archway that we pass under and we pass through to a new, sober and fulfilling life. But I must always remember that long-term sobriety isn't just about surrendering to alcohol, because surrendering to alcohol is just the beginning. Surrendering to stay sober never actually ends, because in my journey in recovery, surrendering becomes a lifelong commitment, because the whole of the 12-step recovery program is about me surrendering my will and carrying out my higher power's will. And each day I have to surrender to my wants to carry out the wants of a higher power. Because ultimately I will always have the predisposition to active alcoholism within me, that I'm right and you're wrong. But the program within me also says that my higher power, the 12 steps, and the guidance of a sponsor are often more right than I am. The 12 steps asks that if I'm serious about long-term recovery, I must also serious about taking the actions that I need to take to stay sober. Actions that I must take repeatedly every day for the rest of my life. because the 12 steps are my medicine. And that to embark on an ongoing series of lots of little surrenders is what the programme is all about. It's how staying sober turns one day of sobriety into 2, and then a week, and then a month. Because surrendering to my will and carrying out my higher power's will, just for today, one day at a time, has given me 26 years of sobriety, because I will always be an alcoholic of our type inside, that I will always have the predisposition to negativity, to anger, to taking inventory, to resentment and low self-worth and what you think about me. But I also have a program that says if I surrender those parts of my life and bring into my life a new set of guidelines that include faith and harmony and letting go and think and hope and honesty and kindness, then my life will be better, it will be sober, and I'll enjoy it. And if I enjoy my life, then I'm less likely to drink. So as I surrender today and yesterday and tomorrow, what I'm saying is I'm worth a better life than I've got today, and tomorrow can be even better than it was yesterday. But it's all about surrendering my will and bringing in my higher power's will, because ultimately the 12-step recovery program is a battle of the wills. And I know today that if my will wins, I will eventually pick up a drink. But if my higher power's will wins, I'm much more likely to stay sober. Bill the Shirt, Bristol.